Hey Quilties, it's Karen Marchetti. This time on Dual Process, Jody Robinson and I are working on this quilt. It's essentially a 9-patch with some setting triangles and then some alternating snowball blocks. So we are just calling it a 9-patch with alternating snowballs. So grab your printable. We both have an awesome idea for you, and let's get started. Hey guys, it's Karen. So I want to keep my idea pretty simple. I just want to do a basic continuous curve and some loopy background fills. So I'm going to assume that I can get about that in one pass. Okay, so I'm going to start here. I'm just going to continuous curve to there. Okay, and then I'm going to fill this background fill before I leave this section, just with some loopies. From here, go to here, here. See how simple that was? From here, go to here. And I mean, there are a million paths. This is just the path that I'm choosing. Some people might want to fill this other area when they're there. I like to go left to right, then right to left, then left to right. So again, this is not the only path. This is just the path I have chosen to use. From here, I'm going to go in here, up to here, then fill that section with the loopies. Back to here, and just keep repeating this across the quilt. Up here, again, fill in with loopies, and then we're there. So now I'm going to come from the right to the left to actually fill in these blocks. So we'll start here, and we're just doing this, just continuous curving. Now we're here. I want to make this continuous, so I'm going to keep going to the left, essentially filling in the top half of all those blocks. Okay, fill this corner in. When I get here, I'm going to hit that little bottom so that I don't forget it, and now back through the center. Okay, into this one, hit that bottom so I don't forget it. When we finish, go back and fill that center. Get the bottom so we don't forget it. Go back and fill that center, and then we finish that up. So now my needle's here. I'm going to leave it down, and I'm going to roll the quilt so that I can get this next section. Okay. From there, I'll come in here, here, in here. And I'm just going to do that. I'm echoing, kind of repeating that first row, but without the background fill. We'll do that on the way back. Okay, cut through my seam. And again, we're starting here. So it's the exact same thing that we did up here. Bump, bump, okay. Do the background fill. Back to here. And continue over. Do the background fill. And then bump back. Bump over here. Do the background fill. So it's very simple. It's just a little repetitive, and you have to pay attention to your path just a little bit so you don't forget something. But remember, with continuous curve, if you miss it, usually there's another time when you'll be there and you can catch it. Okay, last background fill. I'm here and then done. Okay, so again, my needle is down, so I'm going to roll that quilt again so that I can fit this whole block in there, because right now only the top half of the block is there. So I'll roll the quilt to fit that whole block. Again, my needle's down. From here, we're going to fill those blocks in. About half of those blocks as we go from right to left. And now coming back, when I get to the bottom, I fill that one. When I get back here, I fill the center, cut through, fill the bottom, fill the center, and then we're back here again. Again, rolling the quilt so we can get this next section. The first pass, we're just doing that echo, or the continuous curve, not really an echo, cutting through and then finishing the background fills. Get to here, do your background fill. Again, you can be filling this with whatever fill you are most comfortable with. I'm just using loops. They're fast and they're quite easy, and they actually fill the space nicely. If you vary the sizes, you get a really good texture. And it moves quick. Okay, so from here, back down to here, fill that background. And again, leave our needle down, roll that quilt so we can get to the bottom. Fill in those blocks. So it's the same path that we've been doing. You do half of the block at a time. Get here, fill that one. Don't forget the center. Get here, fill that one. Don't forget the center. Okay, and now it's time to fill in the last row. So instead of going in the echo and then coming back, I'm going to try to do it as I'm here. So I'm right here. So let's do this fill. Now here, as I'm here. So it's almost like the first row, just in reverse. Do that fill to here. Do our background fill to here, cut through and do that background fill. So there you have it. Okay, it goes really fast. Even when you're quilting, it goes really fast because you're not stopping and tying off. You're just going left to right, right to left, left to right. Hopefully only stopping if you run out of bobbin. Hope you enjoyed.
Hi everyone, it's Jody. So for this 9-patch with alternating snowball quilt, I wanted to share an idea I had with you. You know, when you look at a quilt like this, a lot of times, you know, you see all these nice open spaces that would be perfect if you were going to do custom quilting, you know, the big white open spaces. But in my experience, the majority of the time when I get a quilt like this, it's generally prints. And so even though it has that nice white open space on this illustration of the quilt, in reality, it could very easily, these could all be prints. And so I thought that I would share with you, you know, a lot of times if I get something like this, I'm going to probably suggest an all over design, especially if it's busy prints like that. So I just thought I would share with you a really fun way that you can try when you go to do an edge to edge or an all over. And you can see here that I've already marked these yellow wavy lines. You'll notice every single one is just totally random. They're not necessarily even equally spaced. And essentially, in general, I will mark them like this before I even load the quilt because, you know, if you just lay it out on the table or even the floor, it's easy enough to make these random wavy lines. And I try to keep them so that, you want to think about your throat space. And ideally, you want to place it so that, in this case, I know that I can reach all of this because I'm going to use this as a spine. So, if you have a larger throat space, you may want to space that out more, or maybe you want to put one of these wavy lines over the blocks. I mean, that's entirely up to you. And so what we're going to do is I generally, you get your quilt loaded and set up, and I'm looking at the quilt, and let's say what I'm looking at is this section right here, and I have my wavy line. One tip that I will give you is I'll grab my the machine head and pull it over to this point, and I'll grab just a piece of school chalk or a chalk marking tool, whatever I have that will show, and I'll kind of rest it behind my hopping foot, and I'll just pull the machine across the bottom, which means I'm pulling it as far as it will go, so I know where my stop point is, because there's nothing worse than stitching along and you try to come down here and do something and oop, now it's square because you can't reach any farther. So it just makes it a little bit easier to know. The other thing I like to do is use that line as a guide. And so as we stitch across here, and in this case, I'm going to use leaves and some little curly Q things. And because I have this line here, sometimes I'll make a point to not go all the way to it. Sometimes I might try to sneak past it a little bit, because then when I come back and do the next pass, it gives some space for this to interlock then. I hope that makes sense. It just makes it look a little less like rows. And so I would go ahead and start, and I'm going to do, like I said, leaves and curls. And so I would just start right here, and I'm going to stitch these leaves. You can put the little spine or not. That's entirely up to you. And when I get to a spot like, let's say this, it's kind of big. That's where I'll throw in a curl, because it's easier to fill it with that than to try to stretch a leaf all the way out there. And I like to do both sides at once, because then you will essentially stitch that spine and not need to actually stitch it. And it gets me all the way. In here I might add another swirl, because that's a pretty big space in there. Just work my way across. Kind of sloppy here. And I kind of just, anytime I get to a spot like this, where it is a larger area, that's where I usually will throw in the curl, just to make the rest of the leaves a little bit easier, not have to stretch them out so far. And you can make your leaves, as tight as you like, or maybe you like yours spaced out a little bit farther. Okay, so now I'm done. And I'm going to assume that I now need to advance the quilt. So I'm going to go ahead, roll the quilt. And now we're dealing with this section right here. And we're going to do the exact same thing. The one thing I do like to do, though, is alternate the direction. So this pass, we went to the right. So on this next pass, I'm going to go to the left. Because for one thing, that is going to let them interlock. And I think it gives a little more flowing appearance. It doesn't look like just row after row after row of all the same thing going the same direction. And so now I'm just going to do the same thing on this side. Just work my way across. Ooh, these are kind of sloppy. Put in some curls. You don't want to do a pass and not put any curls in, because then it will look like you forgot to do them. And some of these are going to get small, and I think that really helps in that flowing look. And then see here, I'll go ahead and put a curl in there. It's a little bit bigger space. Probably add a curl in here as well. And this goes really nice and fast, and it's really pretty. I mean, it's not like you're, not doing something pretty just because it's fast. And again, so now I'm going to go ahead, advance the quilt. And now I'm going to do this next one. And of course, now I'm going to alternate direction. I came this way. So now we're going to go that way again. You're just going to repeat that process the whole way until you've completed the entire quilt. Almost forgot to put some curls in here, so let's put one in there. It's a fairly big space. I also love when there's kind of some really small ones mixed in with some bigger ones. I think it's really pretty that way. And of course, just because I'm using leaves here, certainly doesn't mean that you can't use something else. This works just as well with feathers. It looks really pretty too. Maybe we should put a curl in there. Okay, again, I'm going to advance the quilt, and I'm going to go ahead and draw out the rest of this quilt. Okay, and that brings us to the end of the quilt. And I think that this really, it's just such a really pretty, feminine, almost look to the quilting. So I hope you guys will give that a try. And, you know, even like I said, you can do the leaves, but you could also put feathers or loops or any design that you like. See you next time. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope that you have enjoyed today's designs, and be sure to join us for the next episode of Dual Process.